about is for a vulnerable and no-income person.
Yes.
Well, anywhere. Yes.
When we have, when we come on oversight, when you are ready, you prepared, you address us on that. We are very much interested. Senator Eretikingibe.
But I'm not going to ask a question. I just wanted to add that we only are thinking of block work houses, but we can actually build cheap houses or not expensive homes using laterite as well as 10% cement. There are machines that do this. It looks like brick, but is much cheaper. So there are all kinds of ways. As a civil engineer, I know that we can produce. Yes, we can. We're just not looking at other options other than the regular ways that we've always built. That's the only comment I wanted to make.
Yes, Your Excellency, we're hiding. It's a compressed block. It's a compressed earth block. You put just 10% of cement. If you put more than 10%, it will not work. So if you put more than that or less than that, it's going to work. And with
that's why I said that we need a technical session so that
10% block, then 90% works.
10% cement.
10% cement, then 90%.
Contradiction. At the appropriate time. Come on.
Outside your presentations, I want to ask you something that is very urgent. Yesterday I called you about the ongoing demolitions of houses in the Abulado Festac extension. So many people have cried out. I've sent you a lot of messages today, even I've gone through your WhatsApp. I would like to know from you what you are doing about it, because you assured me that you will intervene. If people have built houses and they were making payments to Federal Housing Authority and they have receipts to back up, if there's any disagreement on the payments, we should be able to call them to resolve the matter. But today, the demolitions were continuing. So I sincerely, on behalf of the committee, would like you to intervene by at least temporarily halting the demolitions for you to look into the matter properly.
Distinguished, as you quite well said that yesterday we discussed about this and I immediately called the MD of FFG. What he confirms to me are that some of the houses were built without authority, some were built without paying ground rent, and some were built on some layout that were not meant for houses. That's what he did. And I particularly told him that he should halt and then give them time. If they have already built the houses, let them pay whatever the government wants them to pay, especially in terms of ground rent, even if there is a penalty for that, so that at least we'll sustain we'll stop it and then ask them to improve on the property if they want. So hearing that it has continued today, surely when we get out here, I'm going to draw his attention to stop further demolition on that.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. As mentioned by some of our colleagues, particularly Senator Abdul Nengi, Honourable Minister will allow you with your team to go back. You have had so much raised on certain documentations. Will allow you to go and do a lot more, especially regarding to the fact that you are just new, about 3 months of creation, and you have just commenced work. And then we would like you to also, at some time, brief this committee on what you are going to do, what the plan for the supplementary budget, what are the details, what does that entail, so that we can now know how to follow the money. And then we'll be planning an oversight visit in due course. We'll let you know about that. Senator Lola Ashiru, our leader, has asked you about ongoing projects, members of National Assembly. I think you need to look into that. So I want next we meet, you can give us a proper update on the progress of those projects. Thank you. In the absence of that, this meeting is hereby adjourned sine die. said, let the minister sign my own. All right. Sunday, go ahead. Oh, that's all. That's all. Okay.
Open page 4. Internally generated revenue. 50. You say the internally generated revenue, called IGR, from January to December 2022 was in the sum of 3,160,804,912, and then 13 kobo for the year ending 2022. For the year 2023 up to October, you have 1,774,194,662.61, which means you only have 2 months revenue that you have not added up. So if you look at 3.16 and compared to 1.774, that means the performance of the revenue for 2023 is almost 70% compared to what you have. The performance of your 2022 revenue. First of all, what do you think is the problem? In view of most of these revenues level for you are not movable, they are fixed assets. Why the huge discrepancy? If you look at the withholding tax and the value added, nothing is built on nothing. You need to have the foundation to build something. What is the input that made this necessary explanation? What did you have to have the summary of your revenues? That means what are the inputs? What are the revenues? What are the attraction? What attracted these revenues in specific terms? Example, how many houses do you have that brought out these documents, and what is their prices? Where are their location? Whatever revenue that comes from that made it possible to have these figures, how did you accrue them to be these figures? First, that's one aspect of the question. The second aspect of the question, you need also to attach receipts to show clearly that this money actually went into the national coffers. And then lastly, the stamp duty, the VAT, the withholding tax, you know, as a matter of concern, the National Assembly is coming up with its own MTEP. That means in preparation to the a preparation for the 2024. So some of us are members of the Finance Committee. We need to understand precisely are these your correct forwarded figures to both the housing and to the Finance Committee, considering the fact that you are disengaging Minister of Works. So we want to make sure that any correct figures that you have forwarded has some variables to the actual revenue that is on ground. As members of Housing and then Finance Committee also, we'll be able to ascertain the correctness of this with not only the CBN, because certainly there will be cross-check of this amount to the CBN and then to the Accountant General Office. So if you attach the necessary documents that will back all this submission, I think that will go a long way in making us understand the actual revenues that you have actually put into the national corpus vis-a-vis the Office of the Accountant General and then the CBN account. But the only explanation I need from you now is the huge difference of revenues in 2022 and 2023, even though 2023 is not yet ending. You have another month and a half. But look at the disparity of the revenue. What made it possible like that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The Honorable Minister and the Minister for States, we are just taking up a ministry that has been subsumed under another ministry. I understand this scenario because by the leave of last Senate, I was here as a vice of this committee, and I tend to understand the vagaries at that time. I know housing sector is a very big sector. It was an anomaly to subsume housing sector under Ministry of Works, because housing on its own is such a big responsibility. In fact, it's fundamental to human need. And I know there are so much you will do. I mean, know your track record as a Federal Mortgage Bank Managing Director. And we just want to appeal to the community. Knowledge is important. Information is very, very important. I am sure many of the questions we have to ask, and much of the question our distinguished Senator Emeritus Lincoln is asking, you need to do a lot to be able to get answer to it. And if you throw the floor open, there are so many details we will ask here that might be very difficult for you to be precise about your answer. And we want to seek the indulgence of our distinguished senator to invest in trust in or on the new team. I mean, bearing in mind that they are just coming in and they will definitely perform. And we want to digress a little bit and emphasize so much on the responsibility and duty of senators here as a sector. We have a great responsibility to our constituency, very, very great one. And we need to perform. When we are talking of performance, we are not talking of performance to our pocket. We are talking of performance in all our constituencies. Last dispensation, very paltry amount was allocated for, regrettably, was allocated to senators under this committee. And we want to say that such an issue will not be acceptable under the new leadership of His Excellency Tambua. You must be sympathetic to our own cause too. Apart from being sympathetic to our cause, I could say that we are having increasing pressure from those senators who are not here today. Even the little amount of money, like 20 million naira, 10 million allocated to their constituency, are not even executed. In my own constituency, you allocated 50 million naira to my constituency. Up till now, not a single dot of land. I want you to be very careful about this, because whether we like it or not, we are the closest to the people of Nigeria. We are the most answerable to people of Nigeria. And most of your work, most of the things we do, for the sake of yourself, you need the legislators and you need our constituency. I would just want to say that, Mr. Chairman, let's take time to study all what they are submitting so that we'll be able to understand the thoughts and the causes. And formal or informal meetings, you can still have it with the two ministers.
Gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I am Henry Siraki Dixon, Senator representing Bayelsa West. And I'm a member of this committee, as you all can see. Honorable Minister, my inquiries do not necessarily arise from the presentation you have made this afternoon directly. I recall you appeared before us at the Appropriation Committee, and those of us who were there listened to you carefully. Because of our interest in this sector, it's a very important sector, and the chairman said our mind when he said we all appreciate the president for separating this ministry from the Ministry of Works, as it was done in the last 8 years. Now, in the course of your presentation that day, and also somehow indirectly in the course of what you have said here today, you seem to have two programs in terms of housing sector development. You have a program with respect to development of housing estates in state capitals, and we can understand that, state capitals. That one is not, I think you are doing it on the basis of equality of states, as it were, because every state has a state capital. The other one that really bothers me is your criteria for housing development in the so-called rural areas. Because, like a number of my colleagues, we represent a number of rural areas. For some of us, the majority of our states are rural. Just new states coming up. And if you base your criteria on how people can buy houses and so on and so forth, the market forces and all of that, then I have some concern as to what happens in my rural areas, as well as other rural areas across the length and breadth of this country. You know, because I understand when you are talking of market forces and economic viability and how people can afford those houses, so you want to maybe build them as many or as you can or as much as you can in state capitals where you can readily do the marketing and people can afford, and I perfectly understand that. Okay, and we don't expect you to operate at a loss. However, the more fundamental concern we have is how, through this ministry, now that we have this separation and therefore this renewed federal government focus, how we can address the issue of provision of affordable housing for the rural people and stop this mindless rural-urban migration and get people, young people, to stay back in the local government headquarters in one-room houses, room and parlor, self-contained, and so on and so forth. And that is the crux of my inquiry, Honorable Minister. I want to know your policy trust in this second area. You know, aside from building it in state capitals, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, the big states and the state capitals, what is your plan for building in our rural areas that we profit for your bodies and so on and so forth? I think that's what I would like some explanation. What you talked about it, i.e. your private developers. And we're very interested in that. I'm sure we'll have follow-up conversations with you for follow-up. Concerning rural housing development, can we have?
I think, Professor, I would like to respond to these three questions, interventions.
Within its own priorities and deliverables, we intend to establish the National Social Housing Fund. This is to ensure that Nigerians, including the low income, those without income, the vulnerable groups, and even underprivileged, have access to decent, especially and dignified accommodation. We have created the framework currently for the establishment of the National Social Housing Fund. And once the Federal Executive Council approve it, we'll now bring it as a bill to the National Assembly to approve. What we intend to do, we intend to get the sources of funding. How do you source this fund, including the gains from the removal of subsidy, investment, by some unclaimed dividends. We have a lot of money, unclaimed dividends. We want to pick from there as an investment, not to take it off. And even the monies in the dormant account that the banks are having. So I'm now trying to research and find out how much are the dormant accounts, how much can CBN bring on board, and the profit after tax from pension funds and contribution from corporate bodies and the institution as part of their corporate social responsibilities. I was looking at it that through the committee we have set up, one of them was proposing, if you have 20 indigent Nigerians, if they can contribute 2,000 naira monthly, in annum they will contribute 24,000 naira. If you contribute 24,000 naira times 20 million Nigerians, you are getting 480 billion. With this 480 billion, you can build 4,000 houses, 120,000 houses for 4 million naira house. 120,000 houses, if you divide it by 774, you are getting at least every local government will get nothing less than 120 houses. So that is some of the scenario we are looking at. This is just one aspect of it. By the time we get the committee finishes work, we are going to have a chunk of money whereby the no income, the underprivileged will be able to access housing. Some without housing will build the houses for them. Some, the houses need to be upgraded. Some need to be rehabilitated. So this is the kind of thing that we intend to do for that. This is on one aspect of it. For the other houses that we said is for majorly for the states and the cities. We may likely escalate it to other senatorial zones, then maybe to federal constituencies. This is for the renewed hope estates that we intend to do. But as we know that if we are doing 120, so if you are doing 500 houses in the state capital, when you come to senatorial zone, you manage to have like 200 houses, depending on the sales you are getting from there. Your Excellency, this is one of it. For the distinguished senators, I would like to chip in a little about it, about why the decline. Quite well, there's a decline in revenue generation. Even ourselves were surprised, but we are not surprised when we look at what happened. This 2023 year, you have to know, is an election year. There are a lot of distractions. There's a change of government. Even the ministers were not appointed on time or were just 3 months old. So that's some of the things, because lack of signing of the primary and the secondary transactions as a result of not appointing the honorable ministers are also some of the things that do that. And you know, when there is an election year, there is at least 3 months where even the staff of the ministry who are supposed to be pursuing the payments will not be on seat most of the time. So these are some of the issues. And going forward, we assure you that 2024 is going to be a better year with our own supervision.
Yes, sir, before I thought kindly canvass a position that some of this documentation will require. Just find time, attach them to some of these observations, and we'll be all right. Yeah.
I just need a simple clarification. Under Section 4, releases from 2022, if you look at overhead and overhead releases, in the year 2023, you have 132 billion, 504, 851 naira 64 kobo, and the releases 77 billion, 294. No, the figures I have here is billion, 77 billion. What? That's what I'm trying to find out. Look at it.
It's not a distinguished.
No, look at it. Look,
that's why we said
77.
kindly request for that little time.
On my paper is billion, not billion.
Yes.
Chairman, give me a glasses.
No, the page 4, overhead and overhead releases, 132 billion. It's all right.
It's million. Yes, sir. It's not billion. It's not billion. It's 132 million against 77 million. So that makes it 58%.
All right. Your mic, sir. It's on already. Your mic, sir.
I concur with what the leader said earlier on about them going back to do the needful. But just to highlight this, page 5, foreign and local interventions. Senator Dixon touched on it, on the issue of Shelter Afrique. What is missing there is the list of recipients of these interventions, the shareholding figures of the ministry in Shelter Afrique, and possibly the dividends received over the past 2-3 years. But that is what they can put together in the next presentation. Thank you.
4 million.
4 million naira.
Are you, Governor Dixon, Senator raised this question because of his exceptional terrain where he comes from. Whether you have taken cognizance of that and then the ongoing impression of the country, so that we don't sit down here, agree on 4 million, and by 2024 ending, you come here and say you can only build 20.
Well, I don't think that we are agreeing on. He merely made a presentation to us. At appropriate time, the minister will now come back and then convince us that you can build a house in Bayelsa State with 4 million naira. After piling? No, before piling. Piling is part of the cost. Honourable Minister, over to you.